Hello fellow YouTube enthusiasts! Welcome to the first ever video on this channel. Now, since it's the first video, I'd figured I'd add a little bit of a break to this channel and some of the content that you expect to see coming out in the future. This channel mainly focuses and aims on the history of both the horse-drawn and electric streetcars of Toronto, and the different types of streetcars that were used during all eras of both pre- and late TTC. Now, as this is the first video, it would only be appropriate to begin with the early history of the Toronto Transit Commission. This video will include both pictures found on online archives and pictures I've taken in person during my trip to the Halton Radial Railway Museum. At the end of this video, there will be a section on my trip to the museum, as well as my thoughts on it. And at the very end of the video, there will be a section on why I decided to make this project and why I decided to make this channel in the first place. Now, with our first instructions out of the way, I hope you enjoy, and without further ado, let's begin. We begin our journey in 1849, when Toronto's first public transport company was the Williams Omnibus Bus Line opened. And you guessed it, established in 1849, by local cabinet maker Burt Williams, and it consisted of horse-drawn stagecoaches operating from the St. Lawrence Market to the Red Lion Hotel in Yorkville. This line was operated by only horse-drawn streetcars, and lasted up until 1862, when it was bought out by the TSR, or Toronto Street Railway. Now, for the time being, horses that were used were all fine and dandy, but their limitations quickly began to be realized, as the companies figured out that going uphill was next to impossible. This put the companies at a bit of an impasse, as not only this, but the bumpy streets of Old Toronto were not good for the horses' feet, which were already carrying a car full of people all day around tight corners. This quickly prompted the use of electrified streetcars, which eliminated almost all problems that horses had, minus the uphill climb, because steel on steel creates barely any friction, and streetcars use steel wheels on steel rails. And you can see where the problem begins to arise. Now, though a majority of horse-drawn carts were scrapped, one remains today, and that was put on display in the Toronto Celebration in 2019. Now, after the realization that electric streetcars were better tenfold than their horse counterparts, regular use of these new cars began in 1890. The first streetcar electrified route ran along North Yonge Street from the CPR crosstown tracks near Somerville Avenue to Glengrove Park near Lawrence Avenue, in what was then suburban Toronto. Now, beginning in the late 1890s, the Metropolitan Street Railway, or MSR for short, began to provide electrified car service all the way to North Sutton, near Lake Simcoe. Lines that were considered suburban were known as radial railways, as they radiated out from a central hub to outlying areas. This system was used and headed by the Metropolitan Railway Company, or MRC, and other railway companies soon followed suit. In downtown Toronto, the Toronto Street Railway Company did not electrify its railway, as the company's franchise for its customer service was due to expire in 1891. The expiration of the TSR proved it to be an amazing opportunity for William Mackenzie and his Toronto Railway Company, or TRC. And on the 1st of September, 1891, Mackenzie secured a 30-year franchise contract for the People's Toronto streetcar system. In the year 1892, numerous improvements to the rails and overhead wires had been made and completed, and electrified streetcars built at the Toronto Railway Company's shops at Front and Frederick Street were already running down the downtown routes. Power to the railway was purchased and supplied by the Toronto Incandescent Electric Light Company. When Mackenzie's franchise expired in 1921, the Toronto Transport Commission took over all municipal public transportation. The Toronto Transport Commission, also known as the TTC, was formed via creation of a Provincial Act in 1920. In 1921, the Commission took over all existing fare systems within the Toronto city limits, and that means the TTC took over the 9 existing fare systems that were already in current use. The Toronto Transport Commission acquired the aging fleet of streetcars in 1921, when it took over the Toronto Railway Company. Advertisements were displayed on the front fenders of these streetcars. In 1922, the TTC was experimenting with different forms of electrified transportation, the trolley bus. Nicknamed trackless trolleys, these were first introduced in 1922 on the Mount Pleasant Road route. Electric buses were seen to be more suitable for the less heavily traveled suburban routes. And throughout the 20s and 30s, however, the TTC maintained its commitment to electric streetcars, as in 1938, the TTC purchased 144 new streamlined streetcars, better known as the President's Conference Committee, PCC for short, streetcars at a cost of around $3 million for 144. The TTC placed an order for 50 PCC streetcars in 1940 due to their extreme popularity, and after the Second World War, the TTC engaged in a rebuilding and modernizing program that resulted in the purchase of another 250 PCC streetcars. And by 1950, the majority of the United States was slowly disposing of their trolley lines in favor of bus service. Because of this, the PCC was able to purchase another 205 PCC streetcars at an extremely reduced price. In 1957, Toronto had the second largest streetcar fleet in the world, owning a grand total of 745 streetcars in total. And the last official run of these PCC streetcars was on the 8th of December, 1995. Now that we've had an overview of Toronto's streetcar history, let's go into the most popular streetcars in use throughout its lifetime. Up first on our list, the Peter Witt streetcars. Developed in response to the TTC's plan to modernize, the Peter Witt streetcars were developed between April 1921 and early 1923. The original design was made to be simple, and sporting a center front and center exit pay-as-you-enter style layout, the streetcar was made for two-man operation. The Toronto Transit Commission ordered a total of 575 cars, with 350 of these being motor cars, and 225 being trailer cars. Of these, 50 of them, numbered between the numbers 2800 and 2898, were ordered from the Ottawa Car Company, and a further 50 more were ordered from the Preston Car Company, numbered at 2580-2678. These cars came in sizes ranging from the 47 feet long, small widths, the 51 foot long, large widths, and the 52 foot long, braille large widths, and the trailers came in 2-door or 3-door versions. These cars were 8.5 feet wide, but due to the previous Toronto Railway Company's narrow devil strip, which is the space between the tracks had to be torn out and relaid in order to provide the proper clearance for the cars. The widths were the TTC's main workhorse of the fleet until 1938, when the appearance of the new PCC streetcar began to overshadow the widths. As time progressed, the Toronto Transit Commission needed to modernize its fleet, lest it risk losing its customers to the growing automobile community. With competition for personal vehicles growing by the day, the Toronto Transit Commission had to come up with a contender, and fast. The President's Conference Committee, or PCC Streetcar, was designed for just that new contender, and the PCC Streetcar came with a complete, sleek, streamlined look that was all the rage in the 1930s. You know how it was. Costing around $22,000 each, the Toronto Transit Commission had placed an order for 140 new PCC streetcars. The St. Clair line was the first route to be operated solely by the PCC streetcars, and by December, most services on the Bloor and Dundas lines were also taken over by PCC streetcars. Compared to the Peter Witt streetcars, the PCC had an increased acceleration and braking rate. Sporting comforting padded seats, electrical heating, and minimized vibrations, the PCC quickly grew in popularity with the Toronto population. And the last official run of the PCC streetcars on the 8th of December, 1995. Alright, now that we've talked about the most popular streetcars of the times, let's now move on to the Halton Radial Railway Museum, a museum I actually went to a couple of weeks back in order to do this project. Located in Halton County, Ontario, this preservation railway is an awesome place. Beginning in the 1950s, a bunch of guys got together and had one too many drinks one night at the local bar and decided to start a museum, a true story told by the caretakers. Everyone I asked told the same story. Now, I went as soon as it opened and stayed until it closed. And even that time frame, there was still a lot I didn't see. This place is huge. There's streetcars of every kind you could ever imagine, and multiple Peter Witt streetcars and multiple PCC streetcars, which you will see photos of in this video coming up. As well as and they also had some MSR, which Metropolitan Street Railway, and Toronto Street Railway cars too. And they also had an assortment of subways and regular railway rolling stock too. So it's really a museum for everyone, come to think of it. There are also a few oddities here and there, and one of these favorites being the PCC rail grinding car. And these are just PCC cars painted yellow like a school bus, and having rail grinding apparatuses attached to the chassis. And they were awesome. I took quite a few photos of this museum, so be sure to stick around and see them right after this message. Now, with all that out of the way, let's talk about why I made this video. So, the main drive behind creating this channel and this video was my curiosity. Ever since I was a young boy, I've always loved streetcars. Maybe a little too much. And I've made very fond memories of riding them around downtown Toronto. And so I decided that for this project, it'd be a video, because it's the way I saw fit to fully explore and go into detail about the history of the cars, and a way to go to different museums around local areas just to experience them myself. I could honestly recommend the Halton Museum to anybody. Even if you're not a fan of streetcars, you'll have a good time. There are many streetcar rides, and it's suitable for all ages. If you do go though, beware the shaking. I salute the people who rode them in their prime, because the amount of sway is unreal. Anyways, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I hope I see you around next time. Have a great day.